All right, let's dive right in. In this explainer, we're unpacking a pretty provocative theory from our source material. It's a theory that claims there's a hidden history encoded in the symbols of power we see all around us, every single day.
So let's start with a challenging question, one that our source puts right at the center of its argument. What if the flags, the corporate logos, even the very words we use are all part of an ancient symbolic language, a language designed to hide a powerful truth from pretty much everyone? And that one idea, it's the key to everything that's about to follow.
The key to unlocking this whole mystery, according to the source, is a field it calls Astro-Theology. Now, this isn't just presented as some ancient belief system. No, it's framed as the foundational science, the parent subject that both modern astronomy and astrology came from. It's positioned as the lost key to understanding where our culture, our religions, and our governments actually come from. Okay, so if Astro-Theology is this lost key, you've got to be asking, how was it rediscovered? Let's dive into the core argument from our source and see what it claims this ancient knowledge really reveals.
The text we're examining gives a lot of credit to researchers like Jordan Maxwell, who supposedly started piecing this hidden history together back in the 1950s. And their main claim is a big one, that the ancient cults who held all this knowledge, well, they never actually went away. They just evolved.
And that idea leads to a pretty massive claim in the source material, that these ancient power structures didn't just fade into history. It says they consolidated their power into four main groups that secretly rule the world.
You know, we tend to think of history as one long, bloody battle for supremacy, right? But this source proposes a completely different story. It claims that over hundreds of years, the most powerful cults had a realization. It was way more effective to just merge their influence, creating this unified, hidden power structure that, it argues, is still around today.
And here they are. This slide breaks down the main players in this story. The source points to four big cults, and each one is tied to a celestial body and has its own key symbols. You've got the stellar cult of the stars, the lunar cult of the moon, the Saturnian cult of Saturn, and finally, the solar cult of the sun. According to the source, the stellar cult were the originals. They were the first keepers of this cosmic knowledge, or gnosis. The text claims they were the master mathematicians, the builders of the pyramids and other ancient sites, and that the other cults came along later and basically co-opted and corrupted their original wisdom. So this brings us to what is probably the most controversial argument in the entire source text. It's the idea that the solar cult, in its quest for total domination, engineered what the author calls the Great Solar Deception. To make its case, the text brings in this quote from theologian Burton L. Mack, arguing that foundational religious texts aren't literal history. Instead, they're a form of really, really successful propaganda, a mythology that was carefully crafted for a purpose. This slide is a perfect example of how the source reinterprets history. It takes the biblical figure of Moses and claims that he was actually the Egyptian pharaoh Akhenaten, a sun worshiper who was banished because of his monotheistic beliefs. So in this version of the story, the Exodus wasn't a liberation, it was an exile. And the theory just keeps expanding from there. The source claims that major figures like David, Solomon, and even Jesus were not historical people as we know them. Instead, they were literary creations, archetypes, that were rewritten from the history of Akhenaten's exiled solar dynasty to push a new religious and political agenda. The source even deconstructs the nativity story as a prime piece of this propaganda. The three wise men, it says, are symbols for the other three cults. Their gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, are all symbolically linked to the sun. So the real point of the story, in this interpretation, is that it's an allegory. The old powers are literally bowing down to the new authority of the solar cult. So if this epic, ancient power struggle really happened, where's all the evidence today? Well, according to the source, the symbols of these cults aren't hidden in some dusty old tomb. They're right in front of us. Every single day. Let's start with just the words we use. The text draws this really provocative line from the word church all the way back to the Greek goddess Circe, the one famous for luring men in and changing them. It suggests a hidden meaning of control is baked right into the word itself. Now just look at this comparison. The source claims the black robes and the white ringed collar of a priest are a direct holdover from the Saturnian cult. I mean, think about it. Black is the color associated with the planet Saturn, which was worshipped on Saturn's day, Saturday, and of course the planet is famous for its rings.
The word pastor gets broken down too. Pa, meaning father or great, and stor, meaning star. So the title, according to this interpretation, literally means great star, a direct reference to the sun, a major deity in this whole system.
And the source also points to modern branding, like Daystar, which is a major Christian television network. The name itself is an ancient term for the sun, the central deity of the solar cult. It's presented as clear proof of that very old symbolism continuing today. But maybe the most striking example in the whole text is the US dollar bill. It claims that symbols of all four cults are right there. You've got the pyramid and the all-seeing eye for the stellar cult, the eagle for the solar cult, the number 13 for the lunar cult's 13 moon cycles, and even the power of money itself is tied to the Saturnian cult. This quote, cited in the text, just sums it all up perfectly. The core argument is that symbols have always had this dual purpose, to reveal the true meaning to the insiders and to hide it from everybody else. So, wow, we've just journeyed through a really complex theory of hidden history, secret cults, and symbolic language, all based on this one source text's interpretation. It offers a completely different lens to see our world through. Which brings us to the final question, the one for you. Now that you've been introduced to this whole framework, what symbols are you going to start noticing in your own life? What will you see now?